The great chamber floated in the darkness of space, orbiting a dying star that the ancient species called Vega Prime. Inside this crystal station, 7 of the most powerful species in the galaxy had gathered. They had ruled together for 12,000 cycles. They had crushed rebellions, consumed worlds, and written the laws that governed 1,000,000 star systems. Today, they were laughing. High Arbiter Thiessen stood at the center of the chamber. He was Valori, a tall creature with 4 arms and skin like polished metal. His people had conquered 63 worlds. They were feared across the galaxy. But right now, his mandibles clicked together in what passed for amusement among his kind. "Look at them," he said, waving one arm at the holographic display floating before the council. "They call themselves humanity." The image showed a small blue planet, third from an unremarkable yellow star. The sensors zoomed in to show strange creatures walking on 2 legs, building primitive structures, and sending weak radio signals into the void of space. They reached their moon 50% of their years ago, Thiessen continued. They were so proud of this achievement. They planted flags and celebrated. Then they stopped going. More clicking laughter filled the chamber. The Kreth representative leaned forward. The Kreth were insectoid creatures, tall and covered in black shells. They did not build or create. They consumed. They had devoured entire civilizations, adding the biological material to their ever-growing hive. Brute Commander Vixith had personally overseen the extinction of 11 species. "Their weapons," Vixith said, his voice a series of sharp clicks. "What do they use?" "Kinetic projectiles," Thiessen replied. "Small pieces of metal propelled by chemical explosions. Their most advanced weapons split atoms, but they are too afraid to use them against each other." "No energy shields?" "None. No faster than light travel. They have theories. Nothing more." Dixith made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been hunger. "How many ships do they have?" Thiessen checked his data. "They have no warships. They have small vessels that orbit their planet, carrying communication equipment and observation tools. Nothing that could survive a single shot from our smallest fighter." The Morvathi representative remained silent. Observer Delthus was ancient, even by the standards of his long-lived species. He had watched stars die and be born again. His body was withered, held together by technology older than most civilizations. But his mind remained sharp, and something about this presentation troubled him. "How long have they existed?" Delthus asked, his voice like dry leaves in wind. Thiessen checked his records. Their species emerged approximately 300,000 cycles ago. They developed what they call civilization roughly 10,000 cycles ago. And in that time, they went from stone tools to nuclear power? Yes. Most of their advancement occurred in the last 500 cycles. Delta said nothing more, but his ancient eyes narrowed. The vote was called. The question was simple. Should the galactic hegemony annex the planet called Earth? 6 species voted yes immediately. The Kreth were eager, already imagining the feast. The Velori saw another world to add to their empire. The others simply did not care enough to object. Only Delthus abstained. "You have concerns, Observer?" Thiessen asked. "I have observations," Delthus replied. "Nothing more. Proceed with your invasion." Thiessen nodded. "The Kreth will handle the annexation. Brood Commander Vixith, how many ships will you require?" Vixith considered. For a normal, primitive species, 100 ships would be excessive. But the Kreth enjoyed overwhelming force. It sent a message to the rest of the galaxy. 1,200 vessels, he decided. We will be thorough. And how long will this take? 30 standard rotations. Perhaps less. These creatures have nothing that can threaten us. The council approved the plan. The meeting ended. Representatives returned to their various empires, already forgetting about the small blue world that would soon join the long list of conquered species far across the galaxy. On that small blue world, the humans had no idea what was coming, or so the hegemony believed. In truth, humanity had been listening. Not well, not clearly, but enough. A deep space antenna array in the Australian outback had picked up strange signals 18 months ago. At first, the scientists thought it was natural interference. Then they noticed patterns. Then they began to decode. The full translation arrived at the United Earth Defense Council 3 days before the hegemony vote. Admiral Park Do-yeon read it in a bunker beneath Seoul, South Korea. He was 57 years old, with gray hair and a face that rarely showed emotion. He had served in 3 wars. He had seen death and destruction and the worst that humanity could do to itself. But nothing had prepared him for this. "They're voting on whether to invade us," he said quietly, "like we're animals to be herded." Lieutenant Kim Yuna sat at a console nearby, monitoring the signals. She was young, brilliant with communications technology, and trying very hard not to show her fear. "Sir, based on their timeline, if they vote yes, we have approximately 3 months before they arrive." Park nodded slowly. 3 months. What could humanity do in 3 months against an enemy that had conquered the galaxy? The answer, he realized, was everything. He picked up the phone that connected him to every major world leader. Within the hour, he would speak to presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scientists. He would tell them that everything they had ever fought about, every border dispute and trade war and political difference, no longer mattered. An enemy was coming. An enemy that saw them as primitive, as weak, as prey. Park allowed himself a small, cold smile. The aliens had studied Earth from a distance. They had measured human technology and found it lacking. They had calculated human military strength and found it pathetic. But they had not measured human spirit. They had not calculated human determination. They had never seen what humanity could do when survival itself was at stake, Lieutenant Park said. "Send a message to every government on Earth. Tell them that 3 hours from now, there will be a global conference. Tell them that the future of our species depends on what we decide." Yuna's hands trembled as she typed, but her voice was steady. "What should I say the meeting is about, sir?" Park looked at the decoded alien transmission one more time. 30 rotations, they had said. Like it would be easy. Like humanity would simply lie down and accept extinction. "Tell them," he said, "that we have 3 months to do the impossible, and that I expect every single one of them to be ready to work miracles." The message went out, and across the world, humanity began to wake up. The world changed in 48 hours. When Admiral Park finished his presentation to the global leaders, there was silence. Presidents stared at their screens. Prime ministers forgot their prepared speeches. Military commanders who had spent their lives planning for human enemies suddenly realized how small their thinking had been. Then something remarkable happened. Something that the aliens, with all their advanced technology and thousands of years of experience, had never predicted. Humanity stopped fighting itself. The old enemy shook hands. The trade wars ended. The border disputes were forgotten. Every factory, every laboratory, every university, every military base on Earth turned toward a single goal: survival in a converted warehouse in Busan. South Korea, a man named Lee Ha-jun, was working on equations that most scientists called impossible. Ha-jun was 43 years old, thin and tired, with glasses that were always dirty and hair that was always messy. For 15 years, he had published papers about quantum field manipulation. For 15 years, other scientists had called him a dreamer, fool, a man wasting his talent on fantasy. Now, unlimited funding appeared in his accounts. The best engineers in the world arrived at his door. Equipment he had only dreamed about was delivered within days. "They want results," said his assistant. Choi So-min, she was 28, practical where Ha-jun was theoretical, and one of the few people who had believed in his work from the beginning. "They want miracles," Ha-jun corrected. He stared at his equations, scribbled on whiteboards that covered every wall. "The aliens have shields that can stop any weapon we possess. Energy weapons, kinetic weapons, nuclear weapons. Nothing gets through. Then we need something different." Ha-jun nodded slowly. "Their shields are designed to deflect and absorb. They push back against incoming attacks. But what if we don't attack in the traditional sense? What if instead of hitting them, we simply..." He paused, searching for the right words. What if we convince their atoms to stop being atoms? Solomon frowned. Is that possible? According to conventional physics, no. According to my theories, Hajun smiled for the first time in days. Maybe, but I need to test it. And I need time. You have 12 weeks, and I better stop sleeping. Across the world, similar scenes played out. In underground bunkers, engineers designed weapons that had never existed. In orbital factories hastily constructed from space station parts, workers built defense platforms around the clock. In military bases on every continent, soldiers trained for a kind of war no human had ever fought. General Baek Ji-woo coordinated everything. She was 63 years old, a veteran of conflicts that now seemed laughably small. She had gray hair cut short, a face lined with old scars, and eyes that had seen too much death to be afraid of anything. Give me the numbers, she said during a strategy meeting in Geneva. Captain Yoon Tae-yuk, her aide, pulled up the display. The enemy fleet consists of 1,200 warships. Based on the intercepted transmissions, each ship is between 500 meters and 2 kilometers in length. They have energy weapons capable of destroying our largest cities from orbit. Their smallest fighters are faster and more maneuverable than anything we can build. What do we have? Currently, nothing that can match them directly. Our missiles might scratch their paint. Our jets can't reach orbit. Our nuclear weapons might damage their smaller ships if we could somehow get past their shields. Gu studied the holographic display showing Earth and its limited defenses. Then we don't fight them directly, ma'am. Captain, what do you know about how humans fight? Tae-yuk considered. We adapt. We overcome. We find weaknesses. We cheat, Guo corrected. When we're outmatched, we don't accept the enemy's rules. We change the game. These aliens have been fighting the same way for thousands of years. They line up their ships, they fire their weapons, they overwhelm with superior force. They expect their enemies to do the same. She pointed at the display. We're not going to give them what they expect. We're going to give them something they've never seen before. Over the following weeks, her plan took shape. Humanity would not build a traditional navy. There was no time, and it would be pointless anyway. Instead, they would turn their weaknesses into weapons. The railgun project came first. Massive electromagnetic launchers were built along the equator, capable of accelerating small projectiles to incredible speeds. The projectiles themselves were simple, just metal and basic guidance systems. But when something small hits something big at 15% of light speed, the size stops mackered. Then came the satellite network. Thousands of small devices launched into orbit, each one carrying sensors and communication equipment. They could not fight, but they could watch. They could coordinate. They could make sure that when humanity struck, it struck precisely. And finally, there was Hadron's project. The quantum disruption field was theoretical, untested, and possibly insane. But in the third week, he made a breakthrough. A small test device, pointed at a block of steel, caused the block to simply fall apart. The atoms stopped holding together. The metal became dust. It works, Solomon whispered, staring at the pile of powder that had been solid steel. It works on small things, Hajun said. I need to make it work on big things. I need to make it work on alien ships. Can you? Hajun thought about his wife, waiting at home. He thought about his daughter, only 7 years old, who still believed her father was a hero, even when the other children made fun of his strange ideas. He thought about a galaxy full of species who saw humanity as nothing more than prey to be consumed. I have to, he said. What other choice is there? By the end of the second month, Earth had transformed. The planet bristled with hidden weapons. The moon housed a secret command center. And in laboratories around the world, scientists pushed the boundaries of what was possible, because impossible was no longer an option. Admiral Spark reviewed the preparations and nodded slowly. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough against 1,200 alien warships. But it was something. It was hope. They think we're primitive, he told his staff. They think this will be easy. They have no idea what they've started. On the edge of the solar system, the Kreth fleet prepared to emerge from hyperspace. Brood Commander Vixith ran final checks on his invasion plan. 30 rotations to conquer a primitive world. His warriors were eager. His ships were ready. This would be his easiest victory yet. The Kreth fleet emerged from hyperspace, like a swarm of locusts descending on a field. 1,200 ships, ranging from small fighters to massive carrier vessels, materialized at the edge of the solar system. Their hulls were black and organic-looking, covered in the strange material that the Kreth grew rather than built. Brood Commander Vixith stood on the bridge of his flagship, a 2-kilometer vessel called the Eternal Hunger. Around him, his officers clicked their mandibles in anticipation. They had done this many times before. The pattern was always the same. Arrive, demand surrender, crush any resistance, harvest the survivors. Status report, Vixith ordered. All ships accounted for, Brood Commander. No damage from the hyperspace jump. The third planet is within sensor range. Vixith looked at the display showing the small blue world. It seemed so peaceful, so unaware of what was coming. He almost felt sorry for the creatures living there. Almost begin approach. Standard invasion formation. The fleet moved forward. But within minutes, something strange happened. The sensor officer made a confused clicking sound. Brood Commander, I am detecting unusual readings from the space around the third planet. Explain. Gravitational anomalies, energy signatures that do not match our database, and ... The officer paused, checking his instruments again. The planet has stopped transmitting. Vixith leaned forward. Stopped? They were broadcasting constantly when we last checked. Yes, Brood Commander. But now there is only silence. Complete radio silence across all frequencies. This was strange. Primitive species usually panicked when invasion fleets arrived. They broadcast desperate messages, pleas for mercy, futile threats. They did not go silent. What about their moon? Vixith asked. Our initial scans showed no structures there. The sensor officer checked again. His mandibles clicked rapidly in what might have been confusion or concern. There are structures now, Brood Commander. Large ones. They were not there 3 months ago. Impossible. No species could build significant structures on a moon in 3 months. The Kreth themselves would need years for such a project. Scan the structures. Find out what they are. Before the scan could complete, a transmission cut through the silence. The voice was strange, speaking in a language that the translation system struggled to process. But eventually, the words became clear. This is Commander Han Murray of the United Earth Defense Force. You are entering protected space. Withdraw immediately or face consequences. Vixith stared at the communication screen. A threat? The primitives were issuing a threat. Laughter erupted across the bridge. The warriors clicked and chittered, amused by the absurdity. These creatures had no shields, no weapons capable of harming a Kreth ship, and they dared to give orders. No response, Vixith decided. Continue approach. Let them watch us come. On the moon, Commander Han Murray watched the alien fleet on her displays. She was 41 years old, a former pilot who had transitioned to command after an injury grounded her from flying. Her lunar command center had been built in 8 weeks, a feat that should have been impossible. But humanity had become very good at impossible lately. They're not stopping, reported her tactical officer. Sergeant O'Tayson. I didn't expect them to, Murray replied. She touched her communication panel. Admiral Park, they've rejected the warning. Park's voice came back steady and calm. Understood. Execute Phase 1 on my mark. Murray took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would determine whether humanity lived or died. The moment that would prove whether 3 months of desperate work had been enough. All stations ready, she announced. Weapons hot. Wait for the mark. The Kreth fleet continued its approach, confident and unhurried. They had done this so many times. The primitives might have built some structures, might have prepared some pathetic defense, but it would make no difference. The Kreth shields could absorb anything these creatures could throw at them. Vixith watched the blue planet grow larger in his display. Beautiful, really. Rich in water and organic matter. His hive would feast well. Brood Commander, the lead ships are entering range of the planetary defenses. What defenses? Show me. The display zoomed in on a series of orbital platforms circling Earth. They were crude things, clearly built in haste. Some appeared to be modified space stations. Others were new construction that looked barely functional. Primitive kinetic weapons, the tactical officer reported. Missiles and projectiles. Nothing our shields cannot handle. Vixith clicked dismissively. Let them waste their ammunition. Once they see how useless their weapons are, they will surrender, said Admiral Park's voice across the human. Command network. Murray pressed the button. The first shots were not missiles. They were not kinetic projectiles. They were something the Kreth had never seen and had no defense against: Dr. Lee Hejun's quantum disruption field. Miniaturized and mounted on the lunar platforms, fired in perfect synchronization. Invisible beams of energy reached out across space, touching the lead Kreth vessels. The ships did not explode. They did not burn. They simply came apart. The atomic bonds holding their hulls together dissolved. Metal became dust. Living tissue became nothing. 47 ships, carrying thousands of Kreth warriors, ceased to exist in less than a heartbeat. For a long moment, silence filled the Kreth flagship. No one moved. No one spoke. What they had witnessed was impossible. No known technology could do that. No primitive species could do that. What? Vixith's voice failed. He tried again. What happened? Unknown weapon, Brood Commander. Shields had no effect. The ships just disintegrated. Evasive maneuvers. All ships scatter. The fleet broke formation, individual ships fleeing in every direction as panic replaced confidence. But the human attack was not finished. From Earth's surface, the railguns fired. 10,000 projectiles launched simultaneously, accelerated to 15% of light speed by magnetic rails circling the planet. The projectiles were small, barely visible, but they moved faster than anything the Kreth sensors could track. When they hit like bombs. Ship after ship erupted as tiny pieces of metal punched through holes at impossible velocities. Shields designed to stop energy weapons and deflect. Missiles had no answer for kinetic impacts at such speeds. Vixith watched his fleet die around him. 300 ships gone? 400. The primitives were supposed to have nothing. They were supposed to be easy prey. How was this happening? Retreat, he screamed. All ships retreat. Jump to hyperspace. The survivors fled. Out of 1,200 ships, 600 limped away into hyperspace, damaged and terrified. They left behind fields of debris that had once been the pride of the Kreth Armada. On the moon, Commander Han Myrey allowed herself to breathe. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. But she was alive. Earth was alive. Admiral, she reported, her voice not quite steady. Enemy fleet has withdrawn. Confirmed kills. 612 vessels. All defense platforms operational casualties. She checked her reports and felt tears forming. 0. We took 0 casualties. Park's response was quiet. Well done, Commander. Tell your people they just made history. Behind her, the command center erupted in cheers. Soldiers and technicians hugged each other, laughing and crying. They had been told they were fighting an impossible battle. They had been told they would probably die. They had won. But Murray knew this was only the beginning. The Kreth would return. The hegemony would respond. What happened today would echo across the galaxy. She looked up at the stars, at the infinite darkness that suddenly seemed a little less threatening. They thought we were prey, she whispered. Now they know better. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began in chaos and got worse from there. Brood-Commander. Vixith stood before the 7 species. His black shell cracked and burned from the desperate retreat through hyperspace. Half his ships were gone. Thousands of his warriors were dead, and he had no explanation for how it had happened. They destroyed us, he said, his voice hollow. Weapons we have never seen. Technology that should not exist. Our shields did nothing. Our armor did nothing. They tore our ships apart like they were made of paper. High Arbiter Thesan of the Velour listened in stunned silence. He had approved this invasion personally. He had assured the council that it would be simple. Now he watched as one of the most feared military commanders in the galaxy described being defeated by creatures who, 3 months ago, could not even build a proper spacecraft. Describe these weapons, Thesan demanded. Exactly what did they use? Vixith pulled up sensor recordings from his surviving ships. The images were confusing, incomplete, captured by equipment that had been struggling to function amid the chaos, but they showed enough. The first attack came from their moon, Vixith explained. Some kind of beam invisible to most sensors. It did not damage our ships. It made them fall apart. The molecular bonds simply dissolved. We have analyzed the debris. Paused, clicking his mandibles. There was no debris. The ships became dust. Atoms scattered in all directions. Murmurs spread through the council chamber. Such technology was theoretical at best. The hegemony's greatest scientists had discussed similar concepts, but no one had ever made them work. And the second attack? Kinetic projectiles. Small metal objects accelerated to incredible speeds. Our shields are designed to deflect and absorb. These projectiles moved too fast. By the time our systems detected them, they were already through. Thesan turned to his military advisors. Is this possible? Could primitives develop such weapons in 3 months? The advisors exchanged uncomfortable looks. Theoretically, High Arbiter, the physics is sound. We have similar research in our own archives. But the engineering required? One advisor shook his head. It should take decades to build working prototypes. Centuries to develop reliable weapons. And yet they did it in 3 months, yes, High Arbiter. The Kreth delegate rose, fury evident in every movement. Then we send more ships. 10,000, 20,000. Overwhelm them with numbers. And lose 10,000 ships? Asked a quiet voice. Everyone turned to observer Delphus of the Morvathi. The ancient being had remained silent throughout the proceedings, watching with those eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. Observer? Thesan prompted. You have something to say? Delphus moved slowly to the center of the chamber. His withered body seemed barely able to support itself, but his voice was strong. I abstained from the vote to invade Earth, he said, not because I knew what would happen, but because I noticed something that concerned me, something that all of you overlooked. What did we overlook? Speed. Delphis let the word hang in the air. My species, the Morvathi, have existed for 400,000 cycles. We achieved spaceflight 90,000 cycles ago. The Velour in 60,000 cycles. The Kreth in 30,000. Each of us developed technology gradually, carefully, over millennia. He turned to face the council directly. How long have humans existed? Thesan checked his records. Their species emerged approximately 300,000 cycles ago. And when did they develop civilization? Writing mathematics? Roughly 10,000 cycles ago? And from stone tools to nuclear weapons? How long did that take? Thesan felt cold despite the regulated temperature of the chamber. Less than 10,000 cycles. Most of it in the last 500? Yes. Delphus nodded slowly. Do you understand what that means? While we were developing our technology over tens of thousands of cycles, humans went from nothing to standing on their moon in 500 cycles. They split atoms. They connected their entire planet with communication networks. They began exploring their solar system. The chamber was silent. We assumed their current technology represented their capability, Delphus continued. But that was a mistake. Their current technology represented only where they happened to be at that moment. They are not like us. They do not reach a level and remain. They accelerate, constantly, endlessly. So what are you saying? The Kreth delegate demanded. That we cannot defeat them? I am saying that 3 months ago, they had nothing that could threaten a single one of your ships. Today, they destroyed 600 in a single battle. What will they have in 3 years? In 30? In 300? Thesan felt the weight of those words. The Valori had ruled their empire for 60,000 cycles. They had seen many species rise and fall. They had never met one that moved as fast as these humans. "What do we do?" someone asked. Delphus turned to leave. "That is for you to decide. I am only an observer. But I will tell you this. In 70,000 cycles of watching the galaxy, I have never seen anything like what happened today. For the first time in my very long life, I am curious about what comes next." The council debated for hours. Some wanted to send overwhelming force. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to quarantine the human solar system forever, trapping them before they could spread. In the end, they compromised. They would send a second fleet into cycles, giving them time to develop countermeasures. This fleet would be larger, stronger, led by the legendary Admiral Kethrix of the Valori himself. Kethrix had never lost a battle. Surely, they told themselves, this would be enough. Back on Earth, Admiral Park Do-Yan received the intelligence reports and smiled grimly. 2 years. The hegemony was giving humanity 2 years to prepare for the next attack. "They should have come immediately," said General Beek Jiwoo, studying the same reports. "Every day they wait, we grow stronger." "They're afraid," Park replied. "They've never been afraid before. They don't know how to respond, and we use that fear. We use everything. Every hour. Every resource. Every mind." Dr. Lee Ha-jun's laboratory had expanded to occupy an entire research campus. His quantum disruption technology was being refined, miniaturized, prepared for use on mobile platforms. The railguns were being upgraded. New defensive systems were being designed, but more importantly, humanity was building ships, not many, not quickly. But for the first time in history, human vessels capable of fighting in deep space were under construction. They were small compared to the alien warships. They were crude by galactic standards. But they were real. Captain Yoon Tae-yuk supervised the construction of the first vessel, the UN Resolve. He stood on the observation platform of the orbital shipyard, watching teams of workers assembling the hull. 2 years ago, I was flying patrol jets over disputed territories, he said to no one in particular. Now I'm building starships. Lieutenant Kim Yuna joined him at the window. She had transferred from communications to tactical development after the first battle. Makes you think, doesn't it? About what? About what we're capable of. When we actually try, Tae-yuk nodded slowly. All those years of human conflict, of wasted potential, of brilliant minds designing better ways to kill each other. Now, all of that creativity was aimed outward. At a real enemy, at a real threat. We spent so long fighting ourselves, he said. Imagine if we'd started earlier. We started when we needed to, Yuna replied. That's what matters. Around Earth, the transformation continued. The moon became a fortress. Mars saw its first permanent settlements as humanity spread outward for safety. Asteroid mining operations began, providing raw materials for the war effort, and in laboratories around the world. Scientists who had been told their ideas were impossible were now told to dream bigger. The galaxy had given humanity a gift without meaning to. A reason to unleash its full potential. Admiral. Park watched it all and felt something he had not felt since the first transmission was decoded. Hope. 2 years, he said quietly. They have no idea what will become in 2 years. To Earth years passed. Humanity changed. The galaxy watched. The second hegemony fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. 5,000 ships strong. This time, there were no Kreth. The hegemony had assembled warriors from 4 different species, each one chosen for their specific strengths. Leading them was Admiral Kethrix of the Valori. It's the most celebrated military commander in 12,000 cycles of galactic history. Kethrix had studied everything. He had analyzed the recordings from the first battle 1,000 times. He had developed countermeasures for the quantum disruption field. He had trained his crews to detect and avoid high-velocity kinetic projectiles. He had done everything right. It would not be enough. The first thing Kethrix noticed was that the solar system itself had changed. The moon bristled with weapons platforms. Mars showed signs of colonization. Artificial structures dotted the asteroid belt. And most concerning of all, his sensors detected 300 vessels in formation around Earth. They built a navy, his second-in-command observed. In 2 years? A small navy, Kethrix replied, but his voice held uncertainty. 2 years ago, these creatures could not build a single warship. Now they had 300. Shall I hail them, Admiral? Kethrix considered. The hegemony way was to demand surrender first. But something told him that these humans would not surrender. Something told him that this battle would be unlike anything he had experienced. Open a channel, he ordered. The human who appeared on his screen was familiar from intelligence reports. Admiral Park Do-yan, Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces. His face was older than in the earlier recordings, lined with stress and sleepless nights. But his eyes were steady. Admiral Kethrix Park said, "We've been expecting you. Then you know why we're here. You're here because your pride demands revenge for the first battle. You're here because the hegemony cannot accept that a primitive species defeated your fleet." Kethrix's mandibles clicked with irritation. "Surrender now, and your species will be treated fairly. Resist, and we will show no mercy." Park smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Admiral, do you know what we've been doing for the past 2 years? Building your pathetic fleet, I assume." "Building, yes. Learning, too. We captured pieces of your ships after the first battle, studied them, improved upon them." Park leaned forward. "Your shields are now 30% stronger than they were 2 years ago. Your weapons have been upgraded. Your tactics have been refined. How do you know this?" "Because we've been watching and improving faster." Park's smile faded. "Last warning, Admiral. Withdraw now. We do not want this battle, but we will not lose it." Kethrix ended the transmission. Arrogance. These creatures had won one battle through surprise. So now they thought themselves invincible. He would teach them otherwise. All ships advance. Standard assault formation. The fleet moved forward. 5,000 vessels against 300. The math was simple. But war is not about math. The human ships did not retreat. They did not hide behind their planetary defenses. Instead, they moved to meet the hegemony fleet in open space. Kethrix watched in confusion. This was suicide. This was madness. Then the first shots were fired. And Kethrix understood why the humans were not afraid. The hegemony's new shields, designed to counter the quantum disruption field, worked exactly as intended. The invisible beams washed over the lead ships and did nothing. Kethrix felt a moment of triumph. Then the human ships returned fire with something new. The beams were different this time. They did not try to disrupt atomic bonds. Instead, they overloaded the shield generators themselves, causing cascading failures that left the hegemony ships exposed. Before Kethrix could issue new orders, the kinetic weapons followed, smashing through unprotected holes. "They adapted," his tactical officer reported, voice shaking. "They found a way around our countermeasures, and we adapt as well. Switch to secondary protocols?" But the humans were already adapting to those too. Every tactic the hegemony tried, the humans countered. Every adjustment the fleet made, the human ships anticipated. It was as if they could see the future. In truth, they were simply faster. Faster at analyzing. Faster at responding. Faster at learning. The hegemony fought the way they had always fought, following patterns developed over millennia. The humans fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to gain. The battle lasted for hours. By the end, Kethrix's flagship was burning. 3,000 of his ships were debris. The survivors were surrounded, damaged, beaten. A transmission came through. It was Admiral Park again, but his expression had changed. The grimness was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like sympathy. Admiral Kethrix Park said quietly, "You fought well. Your warriors showed courage. But this war is over." Kethrix slumped in his command chair. Around him, his bridge crew stared at their displays in shock. The greatest fleet in galactic history, defeated by creatures who had been building mud huts when his species first touched the stars. "What happens now?" Kethrix asked. "Now you return to your council. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that humanity has no interest in conquest or revenge. But also tell them— Park paused, choosing his words carefully. Tell them that the old order is over. The galaxy will not be ruled by force anymore. It will be shaped by cooperation, by partnership, by species working together instead of dominating each other. And if the hegemony refuses, then we will defend ourselves, as many times as necessary. For as long as necessary. Park's voice hardened slightly. But Admiral, I hope it doesn't come to that. We have spent our entire existence fighting. We're very good at it. We would rather be good at something else. Kethrix ordered the retreat. His surviving ships limped away into hyperspace, leaving behind their dead and their pride. 3 months later, the Galactic Council received its first human ambassador. Shin Youngji was 71 years old. She had silver hair, kind eyes, and hands that trembled slightly from age. She had spent her career negotiating peace agreements between nations that had hated each other for centuries. Now she would negotiate with species that had ruled the stars for millennia. The council chamber fell silent as she entered. 7 species watched this small, fragile creature who represented the most dangerous civilization in the galaxy. You came to take our home? Youngji began, her voice soft but clear. You saw us as primitives, as prey. You expected easy victory. No one spoke. Many species in our position would demand revenge, reparations, perhaps your destruction. Yanji smiled gently. We considered it. I will not lie. But humanity has learned something in our brief, violent history. She looked at each representative in turn. The cycle of conquest ends only when someone chooses to end it. We choose to end it, not because we are weak. We have proven we are not weak. We choose to end it because we want something better. Yunji spread her hands, a human gesture of openness. We offer you our hand, not as conquerors, not as the conquered, but as equals, partners in building something new, something that has never existed in your 12,000 cycles of rule. The silence stretched. Then Observer Delthus rose on his ancient, withered limbs. He moved slowly toward the human woman, his eyes seeing something that no one else could see. I have waited 70,000 cycles to witness something truly new in this galaxy, he said. Empires rise and fall. Species conquer and are conquered. The pattern repeats endlessly. Until today, he extended a thin appendage toward Yunji. The Morvathi accepts your offer of partnership. One by one, the other species followed. Even the Kreth, still bitter from their defeat, recognized that the old ways were over. 6 months later, Ambassador Shin returned to Earth. Her shuttle descended through clouds she had never expected to see again, toward a planet that had survived against impossible odds. Her aide, a young diplomat named Kong Junsu, sat beside her, reviewing reports from the new Galactic Partnership Council. Things were changing quickly. Trade agreements, technology sharing, joint exploration missions. A galaxy that had known only competition and conquest was learning something new. Ma'am, Junsu said, what do you think happens now? Yunji looked out the window at Earth growing larger below. The planet looked different now. There were new structures in orbit, new lights on the dark side where cities had grown, but it was still home. Still the small blue world that had surprised the galaxy. Now we do what we've always done, she said. We grow. We learn. We reach for things just beyond our grasp. The shuttle touched down. Yunji stepped onto solid ground, breathing air that generations of her ancestors had breathed. Above her, the stars waited. 3 years ago, they thought we would fall in 30 days, she said quietly. They had no idea who we were, what we could become. Junsu nodded. And now? Yunji smiled, the same smile her grandmother had worn when she told stories of survival and hope. Now they're about to find out. She walked forward into the sunlight, into a future that belonged to humanity and to every species willing to reach for it together. The old order had ended. The new order was just beginning, and humanity as always was just getting started.